The verdict is in, the trial is over, and it's pretty clear that it has been an overwhelming victory for Johnny Depp and a rather bittersweet defeat for Amber Heard. The trial lasted 6 weeks, but the story, the drama, has lasted well over 6 years, and I, for one, can't believe that he won. As I mentioned on Paleo Angloism's stream, I didn't believe at the beginning of the trial, even at the beginning of this whole story, when news started to break that actually he wasn't the guilty partner in this, he wasn't the abuser, he was actually the one being abused. I thought despite all of that, despite all the evidence, that he was going to lose this particular trial because he already lost the one in the UK, but that was mainly due to the judge being, let's just say, compromised. I was of the belief that due to how society views men and women, and this has not been helped by feminism and also by the lingering effects of old traditional views of how men and women work and the interactions between the two, that because of that, because of this societal view that women are always the victims and men are always the perpetrators, that he would lose. Despite the evidence, people would just not look at it as actual evidence, that they must just ignore it because of their preconceived notions and award her everything and him nothing. But then things started to change. I noticed online the Justice for Johnny movement started to develop and grow. It didn't even grow out of the MRM necessarily. I don't think it did at all. These were the fans who stuck by him through thick and thin, who never doubted his story, who never doubted that he was innocent. I myself was on the fence at the beginning because I didn't know where the evidence was going to lie. I didn't know if he was guilty or innocent, or if Amber Heard was innocent or guilty. All I could say was, well, if you look at Johnny Depp's past, he has never had any issues with any of his ex-partners, save for one who testified against him at this trial, but she just came across as a jilted lover and was obviously salty that he broke up with her. Aside from her, Vanessa Paradis, Winona Ryder, and loads of other exes that have been talking about this have either said nothing happened or outright defended him, like Vanessa Paradis did and Winona Ryder. Those two defended him to the hill, as did, of course, Kate Moss. She even went up there and testified on his behalf when Amber Heard opened the door to her testimony by spouting blatant lies about him pushing her down a flight of stairs. All of that aside, I still thought that no matter what they say, they would not be believed, they would be ignored because of the victimhood mentality, because of what feminism has indoctrinated people to believe in for so many decades. But as the Justice for Johnny movement grew, and as a lot of MRM talking points have become more accepted in mainstream, already a lot of their issues have been accepted in the mainstream, like suicide, and now, most importantly, abuse. Although abuse is going to take a little while longer than men's mental and physical health, I saw the beginnings of something changing. Maybe not societal, but at the very least in this story, people started to wake up thanks to the many people who backed him, and also the fact that, well, it was too obvious, far too obvious, that he was clearly the victim. And then I started seeing, wherever I was, there were people from all walks of life hating on Amber and supporting Johnny. I don't think I ever met a pro-Amber person in real life. All I met was pro-Johnny people, and that was not a coincidence. It seemed to me that most people, and it didn't matter what demographic they were a part of, supported him. And that was when I knew that even if he didn't win the trial for whatever reason, he won the battle for the public opinion, and he's rehabilitated himself. And that is impressive. And that is also despite the fact that he aired his dirty laundry out. I mean, he kind of had to because it was partially thrown out there anyway by Amber, but he, in no uncertain terms, said that, look, I had a substance abuse, I have had emotional problems stemming from that and abuse from when I was a child, but I was never ever an abuser. And people accepted that. People understood he was not an angel, that he has issues that he still needs to address, but that doesn't make him an abuser, no matter how hard the feminists tried, and no matter how hard Amber's legal team tried to use all of that against him. But the question is, what next for Johnny? All I can say is entirely down to him. Now, moves towards appeals are happening. Amber Heard is looking to appeal the decision against her because he won on all counts. She only won partially on some counts, and there are some theories as to why she ended up winning part of her countersuit. I personally think, like a lot of law tubers, I've also come to the same conclusion that this was a compromise verdict. And in the end, it's a compromise that, although I don't like compromises, it's one I can live with. It could be argued he could appeal against it if he wants to, but 2 million is nothing to Johnny Depp, and the way I view this 2 million is it's just money to pay her lawyers off, I think, really. I personally would walk away from this. It's 2 million, he's worth hundreds of millions. He can now regain that money like instantly because he's going to be inundated with work now that his reputation has been recovered. Hollywood will be scrambling to get him back. I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of public apologies towards him, but it'll be sort of a tacit one. I personally think, and this is something I've been saying over and over, that I think alongside his other charitable work, he should do something in regards to male domestic violence victims. I hope looks into that and tries to come up with some kind of charity or maybe a shelter that he can run. And the best thing about him is the feminists who love to go around attacking these male domestic violence shelters will not be able to touch him because he's so wealthy and has a lot of backup legally as well that there's nothing they can do. But it is entirely up to him. He may just want to walk away from it all and just continue with helping children who are terminally ill, and that's absolutely fine. I don't mind. It's sad, but it's up to him. It's his life. I think Amber Heard should drop the appeal because it's only going to cause her even more problems than it's worth. She's probably not going to win anyway. And I think there's been talk that the judge has done certain things throughout the trial, worded certain instructions so that appeals can't really happen, or at least they're limited. And I think it's just a cope, and she needs to stop coping and move on. But what about the ripple effects, the influence of this trial? Does it set any precedents? I don't know. Because some people within the red pill, MGTOW sphere of things, they're black-pilled on these issues anyway, and there's a reason why they're called men going their own way. Although there is overlap with the MRM, so some of them are not black-pilled and actually think there can be change to be made. It just depends on the person. But they think that this isn't going to help any ordinary men. That this can only be a help to the rich and the powerful, and that Depp only won because of those factors. Now, yes, those factors certainly helped. You can't deny that. He was able to spend a lot of money on very decent lawyers. But it must be said, even though his team ultimately did a good job, they were not perfect. In fact, at the very beginning of the trial, in the first couple of weeks, they were quite ropey. Now, obviously, Amber Heard's team was even worse, but Johnny Depp's team did not cover themselves in glory until way past the halfway mark in the trial, and then they really started to get going and finished incredibly strongly. And I think the moment things got better for them was Ben Chew's closing statement when they rested their case. The idea that his money and resources helped him, although is true, it's not as clear-cut as, oh, he got the best lawyers money could buy, when arguably they're not the best lawyers that money can buy. They're very good and competent, but they're not perfect. But to help ordinary men, to use this as a way to help ordinary men who are victims of domestic violence and false accusations, is, well, you now have a moment, guys. You have a moment that you can exploit, that you can use for your movement to gain momentum, to really push this out and say, look, if you think famous people like Johnny Depp can be victims of domestic abuse at the hands of women, then go look into your own family history or the people around you. Go and look into the media and see all these other ordinary men that are dealing with it constantly, and look at the statistics and see how they are, at the moment, 40% of all cases. Now, I personally think it's much closer to 50. Encourage people to look into this more. You don't need everybody who's watched this trial to go in and have a look. If you can get enough people to get interested in this topic to broaden their mind on this, then you've already started something that cannot be stopped. This little snowball will become a massive one that will be rolling down this mountain, smashing all the prejudices that you guys don't like. But nothing will be done if you stand around and do nothing about it. It's one thing to say, oh, this doesn't affect ordinary men. Well, it doesn't right now, but if you get going and start agitating and getting into activism and really pushing this issue to the forefront of people's minds and continue, then things will change. But we don't know. At the moment, it is but just a small ripple. But a small ripple can become a wave. But Unfortunately for you guys, you have to create this into a wave. This is what the feminists did a long time ago with their pet issues. They had small victories which they continued to build upon until they had a massive one. The fact that normal people were willing to accept Johnny Depp as a victim is testament to the fact that things have changed in a very short time. I can definitely say for certain that 10 years ago, I don't think he would have won. I think people would have been overwhelmingly against him. They wouldn't have believed it. Yet, here we are in 2022. I mean, it was already happening last decade anyway, and most people are willing to believe it without even second guessing it. They don't even judge it. They just think, well, yeah, of course. Look, she hurt him and chopped his finger off and all this stuff. Of course he is. To me, that's inconceivable when I was much younger, and now I'm not so sure. And I don't think it's necessarily because he's famous. And I think, after talking to a lot of normal people about this, they recognise that this is an issue for ordinary men too. But again, like, a lot of people have short memory spans and could probably forget about all this, which is why you really need to push it so it sticks into their minds. But I think we do need to discuss the elephant in the room, even though it's not really a big elephant, but that is Amber's problems with her mental health. Now, as somebody who has dealt with cluster B personalities, not just online but in real life, it's difficult. It is very difficult, and Razorfist in his videos and podcasts has raised this point, and I think even though Amber Heard deserves the hate, I think she really does. She is somebody who should be punished for what she has done. I think despite all these things about her, it doesn't excuse her. Just like how we will jail schizophrenic murderers for murdering people, we should punish domestic abusers who have cluster B personality disorders, regardless if they're male or women, because a minority of them are male. But we do have to recognise that this is a group of mental disorders that really for far too long have kind of been ignored, and a lot of the people who suffer from these issues find it very hard to seek treatment. And that can be for various reasons. I know from my personal experience that a lot of doctors, they kind of, from what I've heard, they don't want to deal with it. And that could be for many different reasons. And not only that, our society, our legal system, because as I was inferring before, the legal system all across the West, not just in America and Britain, have this institutional bias towards women, which a lot of women have now recognised, and thankfully a lot of them are seeing it as a problem. This institutional bias, this societal bias, is incentivising these cluster B personality types, at least the women anyway, not necessarily the men, to be worse. It almost says to them, you don't really have an issue, you're fine, it's not you, it's him. And that is making them worse. And this is not only affecting the victims of these people, but it's affecting them too. It's making them think they don't have a problem, so they don't have to deal with it. It's just their personalities. They were born this way, they can't fix it. And this is why I think Amber Heard won't seek treatment and will never admit to any wrongdoing, at least for the foreseeable future, because she doesn't think she has a problem. She probably doesn't believe that the diagnosis given to her by Dr. Curry is valid. She probably thinks it's bullshit. But there are, of course, people with cluster B personality disorders who do recognise they have a problem and are trying to fix them. I know people like that. But a lot of them, most of them, don't. And that needs to change. And that's going to take all of us to fix, unfortunately. And this is why I don't think Amber Heard will ever admit it. A lot of people are saying, just admit it. Just come on, you've been caught. Just please admit you have a problem. Admit you're the abuser. Take the punishment, take the L, and work on yourself. She never will. Because this is what these people, a lot of these people are like, unfortunately, and you're just going to have to live with it until society tells them no. And another thing is that people are saying that this trial is the final nail in the coffin for #MeToo. It's over, it's done with, it can never be taken seriously anymore, it's done. And also this may negatively impact female victims of domestic violence. First off, #MeToo has been dead for a few years now. The thing unravelled itself way before Johnny Depp's court victory. The fact that #MeToo became a byword for, oh, this person got Me Too'd, which was an inference, a slang term for falsely accused or cancelled, is a testament to the fact that it's dead and that it's not seen as a positive thing. Even though Johnny Depp's team and other people in LawTube and Other places around the internet and in real life were paying lip service to it, so they didn't look sexist and misogynist. The fact of the matter is, they were all using this term, they were all using the language of it in the negative connotation, because nobody, at least apart from the feminists who support it, see it as a good thing. In fact, they see it as the reputation-damaging anti-male thing that it actually is. They just aren't brave enough to say it. Because despite the occasional real perpetrator of abuse and God knows what else, like say Weinstein, and even his case is not as clear-cut as people think, there were obviously examples where he totally broke the law, but then other times where it was totally consensual. People like him were window dressing. The vast majority of all these accusations and Me Too cases were done to people like Aziz Ansari, Louis C.K., people like that, who were out and out admitted male feminists who were probably deemed to be surplus to requirements, or had just so happened to provoke the ire of a certain person in their life, these women who feel embarrassed over certain events and just wanted to punish these men via trial by media. And that was most of the cases. It's undeniable. And that was also one of the death knells of it, because people eventually caught onto the pattern and started to ignore them or outright defend these people and say, well, hang on a sec, you can't just say that these people are guilty of crimes when clearly what Aziz Ansari did was not a crime, or what Louis C.K. did was not a crime, because they all had consent. Consent is not a crime. And people will rightly point out that you can't just rescind consent after you've just given it long after the fact. Moreover, people also began to notice that a lot of the people who were running Me Too were unsavoury and untrustworthy or mentally damaged. For example, they had outright abusers themselves in Me Too. So not only was Amber Heard part of it, but also people like Asia Argento, who had her own issues exposed to the world, as well as people like Demi Moore. This whole movement ended up being not only a byword for false accusations, but also, although not many people admit it, it also was a movement that hid female predators, as if female predators needed any more protection than they already get from society. And that's for the impact on female domestic violence victims, like legitimate ones. And what about the impact on female victims, whether it be domestic violence, sexual assault, etc., etc.? Well, despite the 20, 30 odd years of high-profile false accusations, which has not just happened to celebrities, but to normal people, like Duke Lacrosse, for example, I think people still believe female victims for the most part, 90% of the time. And that's not going to change anytime soon. We're not going to return to a time where women weren't believed, because there never was a time when women weren't believed. You can only read Belfort Bax's accounts from 100 years ago and you'd think it was written today. This is not going to change. It would take something monumental for that to happen. Does it hurt them? Yeah, but not a lot. It's just one needle. For women to not be automatically believed anymore, it would take a death by 1,000 needles approach. Several hundred, several thousand of these high-profile cases will need to happen before people eventually get the memo that you shouldn't automatically assume that somebody's guilty of it just because one person, because they happen to be a certain demographic, accused them of it. Because we have innocent until proven guilty for a reason. But unless we deal with these false accusations and try to find out a way to disincentivize them, well, this slow push towards not accepting their word immediately is going to continue happening. And eventually it may get to the point where nobody is believed anymore, and in fact, they may well be deemed as liars as soon as they come out. But anyway, I think I've covered pretty much all bases on this topic. Thank God it's over. Thank God for justice finally being served, even if it's only civilly, not criminally. However, there are other cases out there that need to be addressed, most famously Marilyn Manson. Personally, and this isn't really a white pill for me, I just see this as something that could potentially happen. I think it's more likely to happen. Things will slowly change as a result of this. We may not even see it in our own lifetimes, but a ripple has been created, and I think nobody can deny that. Even the most black-pilled person cannot disagree that there is a ripple effect from this, however small. So anyway, I'll see you all later, guys.